Hello and welcome to Saturday night here. David Devine broadcasted. Welcome in. Hello, Cashew, Dana B, Freckles, Chris McGrath. Good to see you. I'm honored tonight. Backstage, I've had the pleasure to talk with Jim for the last 15 minutes or so, and he's full of interesting stories. I've had a bunch of questions here to ask Jim,
Sure.
but in talking to him, he gave me a bunch more because that's the kind of guy he is. He's great, great, great stories, great conversation, awesome life. So, guys, if you have questions for Jim as we go on, put them in the chat, and I'll try to ask Jim. Now, I'll just introduce Jim from a bio that I read from Coast to Coast. He's a USAF retired. Thank you for your service, Jim. He's a world-renowned expert on the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane, the F-117 stealth fighter, and also billed as an expert in Area 51. Jim, it's a great pleasure. Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. And in honor of being on your show, I was at Bob Lazar's in May, and he had his United Nuclear t-shirt on. And I said, Bob, he said, you have any more of those?
Wow.
He said, no. What size do you wear? I said, extra large. He said, I'll be back in about 5 minutes. He went into his lab and silk screened this for me. And came. It was still warm when he brought it back to me about 10 minutes later.
Wow, what an honor!
So
what
he's
an honor.
Bob Lazar is one. He's a class act, and I've known him almost 35 years now.
Wow. So, and that's what we were talking about backstage. You were just at the Tucson MUFON
Yep.
meeting,
Yep.
and you said that I don't know if you spent a lot of the speech or some of the speech that people were intrigued with how you met Bob Lazar. Maybe you could fill us in with that.
Yeah, and I met Bob thanks to John Lear, and I knew John Lear passed away last March, and I've known him since 73, 74 timeframe. So I've known John Lear. I knew him almost 50 years. And I've always been fascinated by anything Lockheed, anything Skunk Works. Well, if you look at my book, right in the center back there, the 75 years of Lockheed Skunk Works. That is it's 384 pages. I cover 43 programs, and there's almost 1,300 photos in there. So, and there's probably 43 programs I know nothing about. This is some of my goodies. If you look up at the top shelf, all those instruments and everything else have all gone at least 2,100 miles an hour.
Wow.
The TDI, which is that round, it's in a square box, but with a round dial on the not quite in the middle, but just above the 75. When it says 75 years of the Lockheed Skunk Works. That's a triple display indicator out of an A12. It didn't come out of my A12, but it's an A12. And it's Mach 3.23 and 82,250 feet. So it's each one of those pieces up there has a piece of history. The stick down in the second shelf next to my book,
right next to the book.
Right.
Yeah.
That came out of an SR-71. Actually, all the parts and pieces have all gone at least Mach 3.
Wow.
So, but to get back to how I met Bob Lazar, John Lear and I go back to 73, 74 timeframe. So I knew him almost 50 years. And in November of 1988, the Air Force announced the existence of two classified stealth programs, the B-2 stealth bomber and the F-117 stealth fighter. The B-2 was a rollout. Michael Dornheim from Aviation Week overflew it and was able to shoot straight down on it. They didn't have a temporary flight restriction there at Palmdale on that particular day. But trust me, when the B-21's out there, when they rolled it out, they had a TFR out there, so you could not fly over the facility. But I had called up Lear and I said, this is right around Christmas time. Says, I'm going to be coming to Vegas the first week of January, and let's you and I go and see if I can get a good shot of an F-117. Because they were told they were flying out of Tonopah test range. I was sort of knew where TTR was, but I had never been there, and either had Lear. So I fly into Vegas. I pick up John. We're heading up US 95, which is a road from Vegas to Tonopah. And there's about 2/3 of the way there. There's a place called Scotty's Junction. And the reason I use that as just a focal point of distance, but it was also famous for a legal house of ill repute, also known as a whorehouse, that the federal government took over because they hadn't paid their taxes, and they ran it out of business. I don't know how the hell you do that, but they ran it out of business.
So leave it to the government. Leave it to the government.
About 15 miles north of Scotty's Junction, I'm doing 85 miles an hour up the road. An F-117 comes flying over about 1,500 feet above us, sort of about a 45-degree angle crossing over the road, and I about crashed the car because there was only that one really bad photo that had been seen, and we go into Tonopah, we grab a quick bite. We jump back in the car and we head east on US 6 out of Tonopah, and you go 14 miles and you're in the middle of nowhere. You look out there, there's nothing out there. There's a dirt track about 10 miles out. There's an old pre-World War II hangar out there. And that's about it. There's Anthony. Yeah.
There he is. He is.
Yeah.
There's Anthony.
And so we take a right-hand turn. We're heading south on this spur that comes out of Tonopah Test Range, and you go 18 miles to the main gate. Now, as a retired master sergeant, I can get on virtually every base except those that are restricted. That would be Area 51 and Tonopah Test Range. But we drove down the northern fence line, which is on public lands. And we went in west about 2 miles, and you're looking down on the whole facility. Anybody out there, if you have any inkling you want to see a base that has 60 hangars and they're using them for something right now, even though the F-117s were retired, and especially when they moved to Holloman. But we get out there, and this is before digital cameras. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what year are we talking here, Jim?
This is 1989, January 89.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Say the first week of January 89.
Right. Thank you.
So we're down 2 miles down along the fence line, and I look to the north, and there's a black fuzzy ball with a white light underneath it, and another smaller fuzzy ball that was sort of blue and white with a light underneath it. So I knew that was an F-117 and a chase plane. And this is before digital cameras, so I'm shooting with a Nikon. I have a Nikon 70 to 200 lens, and I'm shooting Kodacolor 100, and that was the best film I could use. I normally shot Kodachrome, but I wasn't going to wait 10 days to get the stuff back. I wanted it now.
Right.
So I was going to have it processed at a photomat in Las Vegas. You have to have white hair to know what a photomat is.
Or a white beard.
Yeah.
Which I like to call chrome, by the way, Jim.
Yeah.
We have chrome.
Yeah, chrome dome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I knew as I'm looking at this black dot, I have my camera out. I have a motor drive on it, but I only have 36 exposures, or maybe 37, depending on how I loaded it. And as the F-117 is starting to fill up the viewfinder, I mean, it's all there. And all of a sudden my body react as though I was a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the first time. My whole body is just vibrating, and I can't stop it from vibrating. I mean, this is exciting.
Yeah, right.
So I shoot the whole row. I tell Larry, hey, let's get back to Vegas. He said, well, we won't get there in time to go to a photo mat, but we'll figure something out. So we head on out. We get back on US 6. We get out to Warm Springs, which is the northern terminus of the extraterrestrial highway, Nevada 375. We head south on that, and we stop at the little alien for a bite.
Yeah.
I knew Joe and Pat Travis since the first time I went through there in '87. So we grab a bite. We head off to back to Vegas. We get there a little bit after 9 at night. The photo mats are closed. And John said, hey, I have a new friend. He just moved here from Albuquerque. He's doing his final interviews out in the desert. I don't know what he's going to be doing. He doesn't know what he's going to be doing, but I think you'll enjoy meeting him. He's just a nice guy. So about 10 minutes after we got there, knock on the door, and John brings this young man into his study. And anybody who had ever had an opportunity to go into John's study, it is a place. It's almost like an Area 51. It has so many hidden secrets in there. So the guy, the guy introduced himself as Bob Lazar, and that he just moved here from Albuquerque, and he's waiting for his Q clearance to be upgraded. Q clearance is your above top secret security clearance. And we're just talking airplanes. And I told him my dilemma. I said, I just shot the F-117. I'm the first person in my neighborhood to have shot the F-117. But I have to wait to get it processed at Photomat tomorrow, and it's going to take a couple days, and I don't have a couple days. And he said, well, I got a solution. I said, what do you mean? He said, I have a C41 processor at home. I process film for real estate agents for their listings, make some money, keep himself busy. Yeah. So we jump in his car and we're heading over to the west side of town. He lived off of West Charleston, and John lived just south of Nellis. And his backdrop was Sunrise Ridge, that cool mountain behind Nellis. That was also John's backdrop. So we're about a block from Lear's house, and Lazar looks at me and says, I feel sorry for that dumb son of a bitch Lear. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's from this world famous aviation family. I mean, my God, his dad gave the world Learjet, not counting all the other avionics and stuff that he created over his lifetime. And the son of a bitch believes in UFOs. How stupid is that? He said, I'm a physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist.
Right.
So fast forward about a year later, he's a silhouetted head talking to George Knapp, saying that he was hired by the United States Navy to do reverse engineering on alien spacecraft at a place called S4. And didn't know at the time, but I have, from that time until he moved out of Las Vegas, I was over his place, a dozen times. I had my kid over there. We made some of his commercial grade fireworks in his garage on 2 different occasions. And it was just, Bob is just a unique individual, and he is as soft-spoken and nice as they come. And when all this stuff on the UFOs and UAPs, and I don't like that name, that acronym.
Right.
It's a friggin' flying saucer.
Yeah, we've talked about that on here before, where we're not ready to give in to that yet. I can't. When I need to remember it, I can't remember it. So I'm always going back to UFO.
Yeah. Well, even them are saying, well, they're UFOs. And so, well, what happened to UAPs? Well, everybody knows what a UFO is. A lot of people have no idea what a UAP is. Is it a pap smear? I don't know. It's something, but
Unidentified pap smear. Yeah, I think it might as well be, Jim. It might as well
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
Oh, 1 second. Freckles wants to know when we're ready for questions. Freckles, you can ask away. I'm paying attention. Yeah, you
sure.
can ask away. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Yeah.
Howdy, trust in God.
What question he wants to ask?
Yeah, I think they're gonna write it in. Freckles is just
Oh, okay.
asking, making sure I'm watching the chat, but I am. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Mhm.
And I mean there isn't anything. If I have the answer, I'll tell you, and if I don't have the answer, I'll tell you. I mean,
Awesome.
but I won't feed you a line of crap and say, well, I can't talk about that. I can talk about everything.
That's
I have,
amazing.
and I've had people say, well, what are you keeping back? I said, nothing. If the government whacks me tomorrow, everything I have in this head, what if I haven't shared it, it dies with me.
Right. Yeah.
So
Are there things that you've been reluctant to share? Are there things
no,
that
no,
no,
absolutely not.
absolutely not. That's
Absolutely
awesome.
not.
That's
I,
excellent.
uh, you know, and I, the deals with Bob, people say, well, he's a plant. He's not who he says he is. Bull. I've
Right.
known him since before he went to work out there. He is a straight arrow. He is as considerate, and he'll help you any way he can. He's just very soft spoken, and I think the world of Bob. And again, his story has never changed.
And he comes from a family of they built the Lear jet is
No,
what you said.
John Lear's family built Lear
Okay.
jets.
Okay.
Bob is from the Boston
Oh,
area.
Bob Lazar. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
John's dad was William Lear, i.e. Learjet.
Okay. Okay. We got that
Yeah.
cleared up. Okay. Here comes Freckles. She said, "Thank you." Husband wants to know how many level layers are below air level. I'll try to
How
paraphrase.
deep does it go at Area
Y-
51?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, Dave Fruhoff, who was a friend of mine, he was an SR-71 pilot that actually chased a UFO in an SR-71, and it left him in the dust. But when he retired from the Air Force, he became the facility manager at Area 51. And I asked him, when he retired, he moved to Lynchburg, Tennessee, the home of Jack Daniels. It's also a dry county. You can't buy booze or
Yeah.
alcohol in that county.
We've
But my
heard that.
dad was a director of engineering at the Tullahoma Arnold Air Force Station, or Air Force Base now, Wind Tunnel Complex in Tullahoma. It's 11 miles from Lynchburg. So I'm visiting my dad, and I called up Dave and I said, "Hey, Dave, are you home?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You up for a chat?" He said, "Sure." So I wanted to talk to him about uh, him having to bail out of an SR-71. And that was the primary reason I went there. So we talked about the crash and a bunch of other stuff. And he said, I finally said, "Hey, do you believe in UFOs?" He said, "Absolutely, positively, they do exist." I said, "Whoa." I said, I figured he was going to backtrack. I said, "You want to expand upon that?" And he said, "Sure." That just blew me away.
Right.
And he said he was on a night reconnaissance mission. He was in the far western Pacific. He's flying out of Kadena, Okinawa. He's in an SR-71, and this is late 72 or early 73. He is in the far western Pacific. He is at 78,000 feet at Mach 2.7. And 2.7 is sort of the cruising speed you use when you're going to and from your area of interest where the bad guys are. When you go
Okay.
over target, you want to be at least Mach 3, preferably Mach 3.2, and in anywhere between 80 and 90,000 feet. The A-12s are the single place air Blackbird. They can fly straight and level to 92,500 feet 60 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
They can,
And at Mach 3 then 60 years
yes,
ago.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, the first one flew April 26, 1962.
Wow. And they went Mach 3. Now, was that a formally announced? We have this technology at that point, or
No, they didn't. In November of 64, President Johnson announced the existence of the Advanced Manned Interceptor he called the A-11. And that was actually the YF-12 interceptor he was talking about. But he said this is a 75,000 feet or above, Mach 3 or higher. And it was an interceptor version of the CIA's A-12 single place spy plane.
okay.
And that's why I went to Edwards in February 1964.
And how many of those planes existed at that time?
Well, at that time, 64, the first SR-71 hadn't flown yet. So you had 15 of the early birds. You had 3 YF-12s, and you had 12 A-12s. 2 of them were M-21s, the drone launching aircraft. One of them was a Titanium Goose, which was the 4th airplane. And the first 2 airplanes, airframe 101, actually 121 and 122 and 2023 were all pre-production prototypes. Ken Collins lost the 3rd A-12 Blackbird. He was coming down through the clouds, and his static pitot tube system froze up, literally froze. Water got in there and froze. So he's in clouds, so he's coming down, and his angle of attack keeps increasing. And he's pulling the throttle back, but the speed and the altitude's not changing, and he has no sense of motion or sense of angle in the airplane. I mean, it's a 107-foot long airplane. The A-12 is 103 feet, but it's a big airplane. It's size of a small DC-9.
Wow!
It only carries one guy and 12,000 gallons of fuel. And but it goes through the fuel in about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. So, but you go 3,500 miles in that time.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's
what you have to be a special sort of daredevil you have to love that. You have to love, right?
Well, you have to have big kahunas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say that, but I thought I'd clean it. But yeah.
But they were the Lockheed test pilots were well compensated.
Yeah.
In 1962, on April 26, 1962, Lou Schock took the first A-12 Blackbird, number 121, and took it, went flying with it. And on that particular first flight, he was given $50,000 on a 1099. So $50,000 in 1962 is equivalent probably 1.2 million today, as far as your buying power.
Right. And
if not more,
for one flight that lasted how long?
The first flight was less than a minute.
Wow.
He got off the ground, and he's all over the place because he had the stabilization augmentation system turned off, and that actually flies the airplane.
Yeah.
And the all moving rudders, tails were just going back and forth. He was blowing up so much dust because he's sort of going like this over the dry lake bed. Kelly has all sorts of VIPs there, and he just knows that Lou is going to crash his $67 million airplane. That's how much the first one cost in 1962.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Imagine getting the keys to that. The trust that multiple people put in you to fly that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was the first one to go supersonic. Jim Eastham was the first one to go sustained Mach 2, and Jim was the first one to go sustained Mach 3. So you got $50,000 for the first. Now, if you're doing stuff in between, then it was only $25,000. But again, this is 1099 money. So Social Security's not being taken out. Taxes aren't being taken out. and the IRS didn't have supercomputers to determine whether or not you were not paying your taxes. So it was pretty much net money in your pocket.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's
Yeah,
an amazing payday. Now,
yeah.
did we get back? Did we answer Freckles' question on how many layers were at Area 51? Did we answer
No,
that?
no, we got sidetracked.
Yeah. Okay.
According to Dave Fruhoff, there are none at Area 51.
None. Okay.
None.
No layers underground.
He
Okay.
said, we dug a big hole in a mountain there in the Nevada test site for the Yucca Mountain low grade storage facility for nuclear waste, which was completed and hasn't been used because of politics. And it just irritates. Harry Reid was the one who was pushing for it, and then Harry Reid was the one who wanted it off limits to storing low grade radioactive material. But they have boring machines over on the other side of the Papoose Range there in the Nevada test site that can cut a hole through solid granite in a 36-foot diameter hole a foot an hour. So we have the technology to do underground excavations, and they have throughout the Nevada test site. When we went from atmospheric detonations to underground, they use these same boring machines to drill straight down 13 to 1,500 feet. Now I've heard. Now this is Anthony again. Are there sub bases at Tonopah Test Range? If they're anywhere, they would be at Area 51 or at S4. I've heard rumblings about that for a long time, but I've got no verification. John Lear was a big proponent of underground facilities. Now, I do believe we have underground facilities, but not necessarily under Area 51.
Right.
Because Dave Fruhoff said that he was responsible as the facility manager for all those locations. And he said, if it was within the confines of Area 51, he would have been responsible for it. And he said, I never saw any, but we have the ability to drill those big holes in the ground exist right there in the Nevada test site, but not at Area 51. There's no underground facilities.
Okay. Freckles says my husband has heard different. Yeah, there's all kind of stories. That's what was so intriguing about the place, which led you talked about the Little Alien Inn before, and that's where I stopped. I went and visited there before. Went to the Little Alien Inn, and then that's where they told me how to find the black mailbox and go. But I ran into a time photographer at that time that said that he camped out there and tried to get photographs of prototype planes and planes doing maneuvers there. Is that mostly what happened there, or were there alien stuff or reverse engineering things going on, not necessarily underground?
No, but S4 is on the other side of the Papoose Range. When you see a picture of Area 51 from Whitesides or from Freedom Ridge, the mountain range behind Area 51 is the Papoose Range. And in the southwest corner of that range is where Bob said S4 was located. Now, I have a friend of mine who lives in the Dayton area, was one of the first enlisted guys on the F-117 program. I think he retired as a senior master sergeant. And one of the F-117s had crashed, and they had everything was shut down until they figure out what caused the crash. They reversed the pitch and yaw outputs. So when you had pitch, you had yaw. When you had yaw, you had pitch. And even if you knew it, you were going to crash the airplane. And it happened before. It happened with a Blackbird before it happened to the F-117. But their security badge was good for the entire Nevada test site, all locations. So they're out there playing rat patrol. They're in their Humvee, and they're looking for artifacts from either bombing or mining stuff. So looking for old bottles and utensils and stuff like that. and they were on Papoose dry lake bed, and they were just looking for things, and said out of nowhere, there was no vehicle, but out of nowhere, there were a half a dozen guys in black utilities with M16s. What are you doing here? Let me see some ID.
Right.
And they showed me ID, and they said, well, you don't have any business over on this side. I suggest you go back to Area 51. So they left. I didn't think twice about it, but we were talking, and I didn't mention anything about S4 or Bob Lazar, but my buddy was, and I won't use his name because he's still in the business.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Right.
And they could probably figure out who, within 5 or 6 guys who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to worry about it. Those guys are probably dead by now, because that was back 30 years ago. And he said that it just really spooked him when they came out of there, and he didn't think anything of it. Now, about the same time, there was a Mormon missionary that was tracking the path or the trail of the lost tribe of Mormons. And they crossed the Great Salt Desert, and they're coming through Nevada. And he got all the way up to the beginning of the Nevada test site, and they wouldn't give him permission to come on, to continue his trek and to come on to the test site. So he said, to heck with it. He went around the other side. He went in through the Mercury side from the west side, and he went under the cover of darkness. And there's because they have sensors out there, and they also have if they're going to do something, they'll fly a Pavehawk over there with their infrared cameras looking for humans. And he was underneath an overcropping area, and he got up in the middle of the night. He had to go to the bathroom, and he looks across Yucca Flats and Frenchman's Flats, and he sees a mountain range, which was the Papoose Range, and all of a sudden it looked like a garage door was opening up. And this thing's 10 miles away. But all of a sudden, the light just started expanding. He just thought that was just interesting. And it was that way for not very long. He didn't get in. He gave an interview to somebody, had no idea anything about Bob Lazar, anything about S4, or even anything about the Nevada test site. And he mentioned it to a couple of people, and it got back to me. And I talked to the guy, and he said, I don't know what it was, but a light, it was like a garage door coming up, and it was too far away to see any activity. And then it went down. The next day, when the sun came up, he got his binoculars out, and there was nothing there. He said, maybe it was an illusion. No, I think it was S4 going to go out, fly something that night. So, here's a guy who has no axe to grind, no players in the game. He's just looking for the lost tribe, and he sees what is S4. You couple that with my buddy had where the black clad security people came out, no vehicles. They came out from somewhere, and they looked around. They couldn't find where in the hell did they come from.
So this door he found was like cloaked. It was cloaked, or
it's camouflage, and apparently they've gotten very, very good at camouflage.
Wow.
John Lear said that he was now he flew a lot of things in the Middle East. He flew for Air America. He worked with Continental Air Service, which was a subsidiary of Air America. He flew for them for 14 years, but he's flying a 707. He landed at a place west of Cairo, out in the middle of nowhere. It was at night. There was, landing lights, taxiing lights. There were no structures to speak of, but there was a lot of vehicles in there. And he let off about 150 troops, but he made note of the longitude and latitude. So the next, he took off, he dropped him off, took off, ended up, I think it was Riyadh to pick up some more people. And coming back, he didn't go on the straight line to Ramstein. He went off to the side. He went over the area that he landed the night before on a runway. He has the longitude and latitude, and he's looking down, and there's nothing there. I mean, he has his GPS coordinates were right on the button of where he was at. And yet, when he flew over the area, there was nothing there. So
Wow.
he said what they do is the runway is painted the same color as the surrounding sand and dirt. And the way they make it they illuminate it, they spray water on it. Not a lot, just to dampen it down so it changes color and you could see it. And then they turn on the stealth landing lights. They're probably covered so you don't see them, and maybe they open up so you can see them when you're coming in for a landing. So they do all sorts of spooky stuff out there.
Yeah, so some of it you could see, some of it would be, a form of protection or national security. So you got a lot of stuff going on. You got national security, top secret stuff, but then the intriguing stuff is the re-engineered stuff, and so there's kind of a why. Like some of it you can understand why they don't talk about, right?
Well, no, yes and no. Most of the things that are classified are not to keep the secrets from our enemies.
Okay.
Ben Ritz said he knows that there's probably a half a dozen to a dozen Soviet agents at the Skunk Works.
Oh,
and they have no way of identifying them until someone gets caught. And what they do is, and the Soviets and the Chinese as well, they're working on spy assets. They're in there for the long haul. So they're in for 20 or 30 years to get what they're going after. So you have a 12-year-old boy, and it could have been me. I was a juvenile delinquent. I'm smart.
Yeah.
I'm bored at school. I'm either getting A's or F's.
Yeah.
And mom lost her job. They're on welfare, and somehow, for some way, this kid has been identified as a potential source. So mom meets Uncle Igor. That's what the kid calls him.
Right.
A friend of the family. He gets mom a job. At Lockheed. Administrative job, but has good benefits. Then Uncle Igor pays for the kid to go to a better school. And he tutors him because this kid has the potential. And he gets him all the way up. He has, they have admission counselors at various universities, probably at Caltech, maybe at MIT, for sure at UCLA. And Uncle Igor guides this kid to go down this path to be an aerospace engineer. And he gets everything in there. He has some low-level people that they had worked on in admin at the Skunk Works. So they have the kid graduates with honors from whatever engineering school he went to school at, and he goes to work for Lockheed, and he goes to work for the Skunk Works. Now, this is Ben Rich telling me. He replaced Kelly Johnson at the Skunk Works. And the guy's there for 10, 12, 15 years. He's one of their top engineers. He's an up and coming. Everybody likes him. He's a likable kid. Uncle Igor is still in the family. Mom was able to buy a house, not a rent, a Section 8 housing like she had to earlier on, but now she has a nice house in Van Nuys or in San Fernando Valley somewhere. And Uncle Igor is over there. He said, Johnny, so what do you do over there at Lockheed? And he said, I can't tell you. I said, come on. I've known you basically your entire life. I'm just a friend of the family, and I'm just curious to just what you're doing. So he sort of, well, I guess you're right. So he gives him a tidbit of information. And then that's good, all fair and good. And then maybe another month later, Uncle Igor says, that little bit of information you got on whatever it was, is there anything else that you have that you can get your hands on? Well, no, that's classified. So I said, come on. So I'm a family member. I mean, I've been in your life and I've helped you get where you're at. You can just look around. So he works on this kid for a year or 2 years. And finally, Johnny brings home some really, really classified stuff. And Uncle Igor is really, really happy. And once Uncle Igor has it, he tells the kid, he said, now I want you to go get this, this, and this. I said, I can't do it. He says, I have this right here. If you don't tell me if you don't get the information for me, I'm going to give this to the FBI, and your mother's going to get fired. She may end up in jail. You're going to for sure end up in jail. So you're going to do what I tell you. So for 30 years, Uncle Igor has had the kid's confidence and mom's confidence. And he turns out to be, I'm going to stab you in the back unless you commit treason for me.
Wow.
And that's how they do it. So the kid is clean. You look at his background, you look at everything about that kid's life. He was a little bit trouble when he was younger, but he was a stellar student in the university, excellent grades, good brain. He's been nothing but a stellar, upstanding contributor to the Skunk Works bottom line by his good work. And now he's committing treason.
Wow.
And that's how they do it. It isn't going to meet some sweet lady in a bar somewhere like some of our Congress critters have. It's a planned attack to extract certain information out. Ben also told me that every car that goes in and out of the parking lot at Burbank and probably now at Palmdale is photographed, and your license plate is run by Russian and or Chinese agents.
Wow.
They want to know who you are. Now, as much time as I've spent at the Skunk Works, both at Palmdale and at Burbank, just visiting Ben Rich. And then I had a buddy of mine who was the number 3 guy at the Skunk Works. And I was at Palmdale, half a dozen times. But the thing I'm most proud of, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, let me.
This is my security badge to get into the Skunk Works. What does it say in the bottom? Visitor, no escort required.
Oh.
So I'm I don't know how well I can get this.
There we got it. Yeah, there we got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Visitor, no escort required. Look at that.
Yeah. So that just, that's how well known I am at the Skunk Works.
That's amazing. That's amazing. We're going to talk about your new book in just a few minutes. And Skunk Works was the book previous, right? The previous
this one right here.
Yeah, the one that we showed. Yeah, that's available on Amazon.
Yeah, now, you go into books by James, middle initials C, last name Goodall, and all my hardbound books are with the exception of Nautilus Columbia class that doesn't come out until next month, but those are all available. And my other 20 some odd books, if you go in for say Jim Goodall, you'll get an assortment of them. Some of them are out of print.
Okay. Yeah. Now the new book, which I'll show the cover here in a minute, the new book, I do have the pre-order link in the description of this video. So either now or if in the future, if you want to get a link right to it, it's in the description right below. So you can go and preview that book, which Jim was telling me backstage has a ton of pictures that he's actually took in there.
I cover the book title is Nautilus to Columbia class, and get out of the way. I'll show
it here. Yeah. Let's see. All right. Here we go, Jim.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. Yeah.
Okay. And it's 358 pages, 1,298 photos. I cover all 227 plus nuclear powered submarines built or under construction for the United States Navy. And every single submarine has its own page, multiple photographs, all of the named classes, like the Los Angeles class. I will have the USS Los Angeles, and I will have internal shots of it, exterior shots, and a lot of detail. So instead of 1 or 2 pages for submarine, for a class of submarine, I may have as many as 10 or 12 pages.
That's awesome. What a beautiful, and that's a hardback.
It's a
edition right
hardbound.
there.
Yeah, it's printed in India. The same, and it's not Shepherd Publishing. It is Osprey. They're out of the UK. And I just talked to the publisher yesterday, and he said the books are on the boat, and they should arrive in the UK this week, and they'll ship 2 or 3 pallets to the distribution center here in the US. And it's a $70 book, hardbound, and I look at it as a memory book, because anybody that's alive today that's been on submarines have been on a nuclear powered submarine. And I don't care what submarine you've been on, the United States Navy, but if it's a nuclear powered submarine, I have a photo of it. I have a series of photos and give it a description of where they've been. And it's a memory book. And I have a lot of guys, friends of mine in the Navy, that are just absolutely tickled that this thing's coming out.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a beautiful looking book. Yeah, definitely awesome. So the link's in the description if you want to link directly to that. I think it's coming out November 21st. It will be
correct.
Yeah,
that's when it'll ship from Amazon.
So you can pre-order that now. But what a beautiful looking book there. Now we go in that book. You probably go from backstage. We were talking. I asked you. I said some of these subs could stay down for 2 weeks. And you said no, months. You said no, months. Months they could.
The boats that stay submerged most of their time that they're out there are the Ohio boats. And the Ohio class ballistic missile submarines, they're 560 feet in length. They're 43 feet in diameter as far as the hull is concerned. And they're 18,000 tons submerged. And they're the quietest submarines in the ocean.
Wow.
And furthermore, when they're on patrol, they're usually at about 400 feet, and they have an area of the North Pacific or the North Atlantic, about 150,000 square miles of ocean, that they just go back and forth, just zigzag this way, then zigzag this way for up to 90 days. The longest any submarine had stayed submerged was, I think they called it Triton. It was a special boat. It had 2 nuclear reactors. It was a radar picket ship, but because of some of the stuff, they were able to stay under longer. 184 days, I think, is the record.
Wow.
And the limiting factor is not air, because the reactor breaks down the water through electrolysis. And they create all the oxygen you need. They have CO2 scrubbers. Now, one thing you can't use on a submarine, and that is deodorant, because it affects the CO2 scrubbers. The active ingredient in most deodorants will cause it to clog up.
Wow.
So when these guys come in from being underwater for 80 or 90 days, they're referred to as stinkies.
Yeah, I would. Oh, that's actually their official name, stinkies.
Yeah,
it sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They can't,
and, I mean, and they don't have any problem with retention, reenlistments. Guys, and now a few women, and I don't understand the women's frame of mind to go into submarines, other than to say that. And I'm not an anti-feminist. My mother was a feminist before it was popular. And she was more of a mafia person. She was 100% Sicilian. So,
all right.
Yeah. But the first boats to get females on were the Arsenal boats, the 4 oldest Ohio boats. Due to salt limitations, they had to remove them from being a nuclear deterrent. So they modified the submarines, and they're instead of having one submarine launched ballistic missile with a half a dozen hydrogen bombs on board, they modified the launch tubes to hold up to 7 cruise missiles each, for a total of 154 cruise missiles. And they can hit within a meter to a meter and a half of their target and go 1,500 miles. So
that's incredible.
The USS Michigan had been forward deployed to Guam for over 800 days. And on several occasions, it surfaced off the coast of North Korea just to go.
We're out here.
Yeah, because they can take out every significant target in North Korea. All they have to do is press some buttons. Now, when it comes to the nuclear deterrent, you have the bases for the Ohio boats. There's one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. The East Coast is Kings Bay, Georgia. It's just a little bit north of the Georgia-Florida line. And the West Coast is Hood Canal, which is the west side of Puget Sound. And they can hit all their strategic targets without leaving the pier.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, and when they're out in the North Pacific or the North Atlantic, there's only three people on the planet know where they're at. Now, they're in an area of about 150,000 square miles. That's bigger than a haystack with a needle in it.
Right.
And the 3 people who know exactly where it's at is the captain, the XO, and the navigator. No one else knows. They just know they're there. So there's no way that they could be intercepted. They're extremely quiet. They're going very slow, so there's very little turbulence. And that is our deterrent.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. That's got to be a powerful feeling, knowing that you're 3 people on the planet that really have that possibility. Well, maybe a couple more, a few more.
Yeah. But well, the weapons guy. Now, when they go through simulated launches multiple times a day, all of a sudden you'll have a general quarters, and you don't know it's a training scenario until the end. They said, okay, this was just training. But if they go in and they select a bunch of missiles to be launched, now the Triton, the Triton 2 missile, which is replaced the Triton 1, had the ability, but because of SALT 2, they can't. But it could carry up to 14 Mark 78 nuclear reentry vehicles. And those are about 200 kilotons each. And the maximum load is 14 of them. And the original complement of launch tubes on Ohio boat were 24. So you carried an awful lot of whoop ass in one submarine.
I guess so.
And that is the deterrent. If Putin, which I think Putin's a good guy, on this Ukraine Russian fight.
Right.
But if anyone were to use nuclear weapons, even if they took out all our land-based Minuteman IIIs, even if they took out all our bomber forces, we still have 2 Ohio boats are on patrol at all times. So you have that, and then you have the SSGNs, which are the 2 on the East Coast and 2 on the West Coast. They were the demodded Ohio boats. They built 18 of them, 18 total. They go on patrol now. There's only 14 because the first 4 were converted to Arsenal boats. But you can't find them, and they're
incredible.
They're a big, huge, and it's a deterrent to keep the bad guys at bay.
Incredible. So yeah, we talked about that backstage. That Ohio is a model. It's basically their largest subs, right? They're the
Yeah,
yeah, they're a model
500,
of the,
560 feet, 43 feet in a diameter, and 18,000 tons submerged.
and I think you said 150 people on there. There's
Yeah,
150 people.
100,
Yeah, that's a big.
154, I think the complement is.
Oh
And
man,
uh, again, there's no problem retaining those people. And they could be when the Michigan was forward deployed in Guam, they were there for 800 days. Now, half the
wow.
guys, not all of them, but about half the crew are married with kids. So when you've been gone for 2 years, 2.5 years, it's no different than my father was in the South Pacific during World War II, so he was gone for years at a time. But we live in a different world than back then,
Right, right.
and
That's amazing.
yeah.
These are incredible stories. Now, I have only 800 more questions, Jim. Now we don't
Okay.
have a lot of time, but I will say now like the last two books, the one that's coming out on November 22nd, and then the Skunk Work. Now these cover planes or subs. These stories that you're telling me tonight, do you have books where these stories are scattered, or one book devoted to these stories? Because
No, I have explanations in all my books with if they're for submarines or for airplanes. Uh, I tell a story with pictures,
okay, okay,
and
yeah,
and one of the reasons I did that versus doing a lot of text is I would go buy a squadron signal book, for example, on an airplane that I wanted to build a model airplane of, and
right,
I would look at all the photos and maybe read the text. I'd see all the photo captions, but I wouldn't read the text part of it because I know it. I mean, if I'm going to dig up stuff on a B-52, I'm fairly familiar with a B-52. I'm not going to write a book on it, but if I would, I already know an awful lot about it.
right,
So I tell a good story with photos, and the
yeah,
Jeff Babion, who just retired from the Skunk Works, he said his two favorite books that are in his man cave that no one can touch are my
yeah,
Blackbird book over here and my 75 years of the Skunk Works book right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
I was at the Skunk Works to do a book signing in June of 21. After he did the book signing, went over to see some work they're doing on a U-2 that crashed, and they're rebuilding it. Then we headed over to Site 2, where the U-2 operation is. And we're in the limousine. We're heading over there, and I look at Jeff Babion. And I said, Jeff, I got a question. He said, well, shoot. And he said, how much alien technology is being used in Skunk Works programs? And without missing a beat, he said, none that I'm aware of. But that doesn't mean, this is
he's
him talking. It said, that doesn't mean that something happened before I got here and that I
right.
have no knowledge about because it's beyond my pay grade. I said, and my job is not to look at the past. My job is to look to the future. I said, I rely on people like you and Jay Miller to look into the past of Lockheed Skunk Works to know where they're coming from to where they're going.
Very interesting. All right, we're gonna because we talked about this. You brought this up backstage. We're gonna end with this story. Let's see how long this will take us because I have a feeling this is an important story because we had Jared Murphy and we talked about that earlier
Uh,
this month. We had Jared on, and you guys went to Belize on a trip previously.
yeah, there were 10. There were 10 of us. We arrived in Belize City on April 16th. We were there for 2 weeks. We went there to, we had an opportunity on some private land to try to identify some Mayan structures.
And that was
And
the second part of my question that you said that you had the blood and DNA to the Mayan
okay, yeah,
gods.
well, yeah, I was getting to that.
All right, all
So
right. I'm sorry. I'm
the
sorry. All right,
the first day we're there, the first full day on a Monday, it was the 17th. We get a tour of the uh, Lumbantum pyramid complex. It's just outside of Punta Gorda, which is the south end of this country. And it's about a mile and a quarter walk around the whole top of the pyramid complex. And about halfway through it, the sky opened up and, just came down in buckets. But you don't get any chills because the temperature and the water coming down on you is the same temperature, 87 degrees. So I have a very bad sense of balance. My auditory nerve was severed on my left side. I had a brain tumor 38 years ago, and they severed my auditory nerve. So I don't hear at that ear, and I lost half my balance. So I'm very, very careful I can't lean over and then turn at the same time, I'll fall down. And there was some steps made by the Mayans back 2,000 years ago that were a little bit off, a little not level. And I decided to walk around it, and I stepped and I hit something slippery, and I went into a pile of rubble. This is pyramid rubble. And I had a puncture wound just above my ankle and a slash just below my kneecap. Now, a little bit of blood goes a long way with a little bit of water. A lot of blood goes even more so when it's really, really wet. So I ended up giving my blood and my DNA to the Mayan gods.
There we go. All right.
And as to reward me for my generosity, they sort of on a roundabout way pushed us towards the only pyramid complex in Belize that isn't controlled by the Belize government. It was a little village about 30 or 40 miles outside of Punta Gorda. And we have been working with the village elders and the governing board. We met them all. We've broken bread with them. There's 700 people live in the village. And we want to employ about 150 of them in removing the overburden off of the three pyramids there, which is next to their village. So we're going to start later on this year. We're going to start excavation in November. Jared Murphy, Tom Elmore, and probably Robert Bauer, super guy. The four of us are going to be in Belize, and we're going to do LiDAR work, both with drones and ground-based LiDAR. And we're going to map out at least pyramids A and B. Those are the first two pyramids. Pyramid C is sort of off limits because right now the area is occupied by one of the largest hives of Africanized killer bees, and we don't want anything to do with those guys.
Oh yeah. So it's the killer bees that are keeping. Yeah, I don't blame you there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
So that's incredible. So you guys when are you going back? You're going back later this year to Belize.
First or second week in November.
And has anybody documented this stuff that you guys are going to go do before? Have they?
Oh, yeah, Michael Roser had I think a 4K or 5K video camera, and he has hours and hours of stuff, plus everything I shot with my iPhone. I have an iPhone 13.
Oh, okay. Cashew says Michael from Dark Hour. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I mean, if when you quit moving, you die.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear a lot of people with that opinion. Like, how can they keep going? Why do they want to keep going? But I feel like, I feel like a lot of people feel that way.
And I'm never going to slow down. I'm going to be going 1,000 miles an hour with my hair on fire when I'm 100 years old, I'll still be pushing the envelope and still pissing off people.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's why so many people love you and your stories and all the things you have to say. I mean, I'm just honored that you're here to spend this hour with us, Jim.
And an hour is not nearly long enough.
It's not.
I usually go 2 to 3.
Yeah, so, and I know you could.
The longest I've ever gone, I had, was it almost 3 hours with Sonny Conway, and then I think it was Big Willie. I got on his program. We talked for another 2 hours. By the end I was almost talking for almost 6 hours nonstop.
Yeah, and you were talking today. You were at the conference literally today.
Yeah,
talking for X amount of hours.
Yeah, I was there 2 hours.
2 hours.
Giving And I ran out of time. I could have gone for another couple hours.
Well,
talking
shoot.
about-
Yeah. Like you said, when we talked backstage, I could have asked you one question and then just sat and listened, but it's all such intriguing stuff.
Well, I've had it, and anybody out there who has a podcast and would like me on, I don't have any preconceived rules. You have to have so many, people sign up.
Right.
If you're starting a podcast, it's going to be about things that go bump in the night or anything that I have any familiarization with. And you need someone to help prime the pump to get some viewers in. Get hold of me. I mean, I'm on Facebook, but I do that because I have friends all over the world, and that's how I stay in contact.
Right.
With them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it
And
makes
so
it easy.
So if you want me on a week from now, a month from now, and you want to go longer than an hour, I'm game. And if someone just wants to get into doing a podcast, I've had people say, "Why don't you do your podcast?" I said, "Because I'm lazy. I have too many things. I have so many balls up in the air. I don't need one more to take away from."
Yeah. I don't know if I can describe you as lazy, Jim. I don't think lazy is the word, but maybe just too busy or overbooked or something.
Focused, obsessed,
focused. Yeah. All these good things, but
because of my passions, I was given a nickname by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff back in the 80s, General John Vesey. And he told my boss, Brigadier General John Broman, he said, "Those of us at Joint Chiefs, we really enjoy your Sergeant Goodall. We refer to him as Agent Orange." And he said, "Some of the younger officers would like to have him whacked, but we really enjoy what he does." He tells a good story, and he makes the Air Force look good.
Yeah, you tell great stories. You're the perfect guest. Cashew says, let's have him back. I would love to do that because I still have 100 questions. I would love to do it around the time when your book comes out and you guys are heading off to Belize, and that'd be great if you get time then. If not, we'll hook it up some other time. But I really do appreciate it.
Either you get hold of me or Cashew get hold of me, and we figure out a date.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if I'm in Belize, I have internet.
That would be incredible too. That would be incredible. If you were in Belize when we talked again, that would be incredible.
Do it in the jungle.
That would be incredible. Let's think about that.
Yeah, all right. That would be fun. And since Jared has already been with you, you sort of know where he's coming from too. So
yeah, Jared was great. I couldn't wait to have Jared on. His theories and philosophies and things he has to say about dirt samples on up to the lost history is just absolutely intriguing.
I mean, and on Memorial Day, I got a call from his girlfriend, Michaela, and he said, Jared just had a coronary. His heart stopped, and he was clinically dead. He said he died 6 times or 7 times, where they had to hit him back with the defibrillator.
Yeah,
and he was on a manual compression thing in the ambulance, and it broke. I don't know if it was Tom, his business partner, or it was the machine that was giving him the compression to keep his heart going. He lost absolutely nothing except one thing. His sense of taste was diminished significantly, and I don't know if it's gotten better. But he was dead. And the doctor is saying this was a widowmaker. The artery that was 100% blocked. When that artery gets blocked and you have a coronary event, that event is called death.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that says something powerful, because he was on the show. I mean, he really is. He is an amazing guest in person, and just a philosopher or thinker. I mean, the guy's a smart guy. And so you just think that it just was not his time there. He absolutely has a purpose, because most people might not have made it through that.
I mean, I'm not supposed to be here. 37, almost 38 years ago, I was laying on an operating room table at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. I was under anesthesia for 11 hours, undergoing 9.5 hours of brain surgery that I had
Wow.
less than a 5% chance of surviving. And I went dancing 13 days after 9.5 hours of brain surgery. I love to dance.
I believe that. I believe you did that, Jim. I believe
Yeah.
you did that. Yeah.
And it was a very important day for the world. As I'm at 6 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Harner and Dr. Ebersol were my neurosurgeon and my ENT doctor, ear, nose, and throat doctor.
Yeah.
Dr. Harner is checking my vitals. My pulse was 52. My blood pressure is 105 over 65. He said, Jim, you're not very nervous. I said, Doc, I'm at Mayo Clinic. If you can't fix me, no one can.
No.
And if you F up, I'll never know it. Give it your best shot. And he just laughed. He said, going into brain surgery, a positive attitude is over 40% of recovery, successful recovery. And I came to terms. I was 40 years old, and I came to terms with dying. And that is I don't care what anybody thinks. I don't care. Well, I don't like you. Well, that's your problem, not mine. I don't kiss anybody's butt. I try to be a good steward. I try to be kind to everybody. But coming to terms to die, my life on this planet was over. At least I thought it was. And it didn't hit me for 36 hours. And when it did, it was like a freight train hit me. And it took me 3 hours to drive 4 miles home. And when I got home, I was a puddle until 3 o'clock in the morning. But at 3 o'clock in the morning, just as the second hand was right up at 3 a.m., it was like someone switched channels. And I had a peace come over me. And I felt, if this is the end, I have no regrets. And the rest is history. The rest is history.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I try to treat people like I want them to treat me. I don't like, there's only 1 or 2 people that I will not have a positive comment to make. So I won't make it at all.
Yeah.
But I love the people in this community also. I'm not a joiner of things. I will do something for a year. No, I don't want to do that anymore. Or I was a docent at Peak National Observatories for a couple of years, and my knees were killing me. And I figured, I could probably take some Advil and get by with it, but my heart isn't in it. But in this group of crazy idiots and bizarre people, I feel right at home.
Yeah.
I feel right at home, and I'll do anything for anybody that I can. If someone said, "Hey, can you come on my show?" Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anybody. I don't have an audience. Well, maybe you will after tonight.
Yeah.
So
and stories like you've told tonight. Yeah, people could go back and rewatch this for forever because you had so many great stories in there. So thank you very much.
And we
Jim.
just touched the surface. And
we didn't even. Yeah.
One more funny thing. We got about a minute.
Go for it.
Is they put me under. I was under for 11 hours. And when the surgery was over, I was about 0.5% conscious when they lifted me off the operating room table and put me on the gurney. And I didn't know if I was going to the morgue or if I was going to recovery.
Yeah.
And when they pushed me into the other room, I figured, well, I didn't die. And then when they got me into intensive care, I managed to get onto the bed, without much assistance. I had a 2.5-inch hole in the base of my skull and 135 stitches, and under anesthesia for 11 hours. So it was a pretty rough day. But the significance of the day, it was January 28th, 1986. And a significant event happened that day besides my brain surgery. It was the loss of Challenger.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that was an infamous day where they had it on in all the schools. Everybody was watching that.
Yeah.
Too, right?
Yeah. And NASA screwed up. They should have delayed the launch until the next day. And the reason they went up, they didn't want to disappoint the broadcasters, the TV, because people were losing interest in the shuttles. They weren't gee whiz anymore. And just another launch into space. with 4 million parts that were put together by the lowest bidder. Uh, yeah,
That,
so
yeah, that's tragic. And they knew they I mean, they probably didn't foreshadow that happening, but they had a good
they
idea
were
some mistakes could happen
they
probably.
were they were all alive when the crew compartment hit the water,
Oh,
because there were all sorts of switches were changed and everything else, and you can tell that they didn't know the rest of the shuttle was gone, because the crew part of it is it's a pressurized sphere.
yeah.
So all they know is the thing is tumbling. They don't know they don't know really what happened. But the SRB went in and it took out the big external fuel tank, and it wasn't an explosion. Just it's a rapid expansion.
Right.
But it isn't like a bomb. It may look like one, but it's just a slower expansion. Bomb is almost instant. This thing was slow motion expansion. But there for a while, I had a whole bunch of tiles from Challenger. They were pulled prior to the loss. They were taken off
Oh,
during a
okay.
pull test, and a buddy of mine gave me some black tiles and white tiles, and I sold them here a number of years ago.
Oh, you
I
sold them. I was gonna say you must have a really great collection room,
no,
huh?
I've been married 4 times, so
Oh, so
I've ended up with a in a very
some of them flew away with an SR-71 or an
right,
ex-wife.
yeah. So
Incredible,
yeah,
incredible
so
stuff.
you
Well,
have
I'm glad you're
you have
still.
Cashew. Let me give me a buzz. Say when you want me on next, and I'll.
Uh, that's amazing. I really appreciate your generosity being here, and and telling these stories. And can't wait for you to come back because again, we didn't touch anything. But again, the link, Jim's link to his new book comes out November 21st. The link's in there. You can pre-order it right now, and I think it's a good idea. I think I'm going to do that too, Jim. It's a beautiful looking book. Thank you again for being here,
My pleasure,
and and
thanks for the invite.
all right. Thanks everybody for watching, and we will catch you next time. Again, very honored, Jim. Enjoy your time in Belize, and hopefully we talk to you while you're there.